The radio crackled at 11:47 p.m. on September 14, 1987. A voice, low, steady, the kind you trust on a long highway, cut through the static on Channel 19. There's something on the road. Then silence. The mic stayed keyed for another 4 seconds, transmitting nothing but the hum of a diesel engine and the whisper of tires on asphalt. Then it clicked off. Dispatch at Pine Valley Freight in Reno waited for a callback. It never came. The driver was Ray Milliken, 41, 17 years behind the wheel. The truck was a Kenworth W900, white cab, refrigerated trailer, loaded with 32,000 pounds of frozen produce bound for Sacramento. Last confirmed position, Interstate 80 westbound, mile marker 212, 11 miles east of the Truckee River crossing. Weather clear, 52 degrees, no wind, traffic light. Ray had been on the road since 6 a.m., hauling east to west like he did every Tuesday. He knew this stretch. He'd driven it 200 times. But at 11:47 p.m., something changed. And for 23 years, no one knew what. The first person to notice the absence wasn't dispatch. It was Ray's daughter, Claire, 15 years old, waiting at the kitchen table in their Sacramento apartment with a half-eaten sandwich and her algebra homework. Ray always called at midnight when he crossed into California. Always. She stared at the phone until 12:30 a.m., then went to bed. The next morning, her mother called Pine Valley Freight. The fleet manager checked the logs. Ray's truck hadn't clocked in at the Sacramento depot. It hadn't clocked in anywhere. Nevada Highway Patrol launched a search at 9 a.m. on September 15th. They swept I-80 from Reno to the California line, mile marker 180 to mile marker 4. No skid marks, no debris, no truck. Troopers checked rest stops, way stations, truck stops, diners. No one had seen Ray or the Kenworth. One cashier at a Texaco near mile marker 198 remembered a white refrigerated rig idling in the lot around 10:30 p.m. Right time, right truck. But she couldn't confirm the driver. Ray had bought fuel there at 10:14 p.m. The receipt was time-stamped, signed in his handwriting. So he'd been there. And then he wasn't. The Nevada Department of Transportation pulled toll records. Ray's truck had crossed the Sparks Toll Plaza at 9:52 p.m. westbound, traveling at 61 miles per hour. The next toll checkpoint was at the California border, 73 miles ahead. Ray's truck never reached it. Somewhere in that 73-mile corridor, the Kenworth vanished. Search crews combed the highway shoulders, scanning for tire tracks that might indicate a veer-off. They found nothing. Helicopters flew grid patterns over the sagebrush plains and the rocky gulches south of the interstate. They spotted abandoned cars, a burned-out trailer, a rusted water tank. No white Kenworth. Divers checked the Truckee River, where the highway bridged it. At mile marker 223, the water was 14 feet deep, murky with silt. They found shopping carts, a motorcycle frame. No truck. By September 22nd, the search scaled back. Ray Milliken was listed as missing. The truck was flagged in every state database west of the Mississippi. Claire stopped sleeping. Her mother fielded calls from reporters, from Ray's brother in Oregon, from Pine Valley's insurance adjuster. The company filed a claim. The cargo, 32,000 pounds of frozen broccoli, carrots, and peas, was valued at $18,000. The truck itself, $47,000. Ray's life insurance policy paid out after 6 months. His family moved to Sparks to live with relatives. And the highway kept rolling. But the story didn't end. It just waited. In 2010, a county archivist named Tom Delgado was digitizing old trucking records for the Nevada Department of Motor Vehicles. He worked in a basement office in Carson City, surrounded by filing cabinets that smelled like cigarette smoke and old paper. His job was tedious: scan forms, label files, upload PDFs. Most of the documents were routine: fuel taxes, weight citations, logbook audits. But on the afternoon of April 6, Tom pulled a folder labeled September 1987, Anomalies, and found 2 pages that didn't match. The first was a certified weigh ticket from a truck scale near Fernley, Nevada, 71 miles west of Sparks. The ticket was dated September 15, 1987, 2:14 a.m., 2 hours and 27 minutes after Ray's last radio call. The truck weighed in at 41,000 pounds, gross. The operator had noted the plate number, Nevada Commercial 47J8821. Tom cross-referenced it. That plate belonged to Ray Milliken's Kenworth. The second document was a motel receipt from the Silver Sage Inn, a 2-story roadside place off Exit 46 near Lovelock, 43 miles west of Fernley. The receipt was dated September 15, 1987, 4:38 a.m., room 12, paid in cash. The handwriting on the guest log was blocky, printed in all caps, R. Milliken. Tom stared at the pages. If Ray's truck had been weighed in Fernley at 2:14 a.m., then Ray had been alive and driving nearly 3 hours after his last radio transmission. If he'd checked into a motel at 4:38 a.m., he'd been alive even longer. So why hadn't he called dispatch? Why hadn't he shown up in Sacramento? And why had no one found the truck? Tom called the Nevada Highway Patrol Cold Case Unit. A sergeant named Linda Ortega took the call. She listened, said she'd look into it, and hung up. 2 weeks later, she called him back. She'd found something. The certified scale ticket from Fernley listed the truck's weight at 41,000 pounds, but Ray's truck had been loaded in Reno at 32,000 pounds of cargo, plus the truck's empty weight of 15,000 pounds, total 47,000 pounds. The Fernley scale showed 41,000. That meant 6,000 pounds was missing. Linda pulled the scale operator's notes. The operator, a man named Ed Vasquez, retired since 1995, had written a single line in the margin: driver declined re-weigh, said cargo shifted. Linda tracked Ed down in Fallon. He was 76, living in a double wide with his daughter. She drove out to interview him. Ed remembered the truck. He remembered the night. He said the driver had seemed fine, polite, tired, no signs of distress. But Ed had noticed something odd. When the truck pulled off the scale, he'd walked around to check the trailer door seals. The refrigeration unit was running, but the door seal was broken, not torn, cut. A clean vertical slice through the plastic zip tie, about 2 inches long. Ed had mentioned it to the driver. The driver had shrugged, said it must have happened at the loading dock, and driven off. Ed hadn't reported it. It wasn't his job. Linda checked the loading dock records from Pine Valley Freight in Reno. The dock supervisor's log from September 14, 1987, noted that Ray's trailer had been sealed at 5:47 p.m. with a numbered zip tie, 08 mite, 4427. The seal was intact when Ray left the yard. That meant someone had cut the seal and removed 6,000 pounds of cargo between 10:14 p.m. and 2:14 a.m. Linda requested the motel's guest logs from 1987. The Silver Sage Inn had been sold twice since then, but the current owner kept old records in a storage unit. Linda found the log for September 15th. Room 12 had been checked in at 4:38 a.m., checked out at 6:50 a.m. The guest had paid $18 in cash and left no forwarding information. The desk clerk's shift notes included one detail: guest asked for room at rear, said engine noise bothered him. Room 12 faced the backlot, away from the highway. Linda drove to Lovelock and walked the motel property. The Silver Sage Inn was still open, though barely peeling paint, half the sign burned out. The back lot was gravel, weeds pushing through. She asked the current owner if there were any records of truck parking. The owner pulled out a site map from 1985. The back lot had 6 spaces marked for large vehicles. Linda paced the lot. The spaces were gone, paved over in 1992. But in the far corner, near the fence line, she found a concrete wheel stop, cracked and half buried. She took a photo. Then she noticed the fence. It was chain link, 7 feet tall, sagging in places. Beyond it, nothing. Open desert, scrub brush. A dirt access road that ran south toward the mountains. Linda followed the road on foot. It was rutted, overgrown, but still passable. After a quarter mile, the road split. One branch curved back toward the interstate. The other continued south, disappearing into a shallow ravine. Linda called for a search team. On May 3, 2010, a Nevada search and rescue unit deployed 2 ATVs and a cadaver dog into the ravine south of the Silver Sage Inn. The terrain was rough, sand, rock, scattered juniper. The dog alerted at 11:20 a.m. near a dry wash a mile and a half from the motel. The team found tire tracks, faint but still visible in the hard pan clay. The tracks were wide set, consistent with a commercial truck. They followed the tracks another half mile. At 12:05 p.m., they found the Kenworth. It was lying on its side in a shallow gully, half buried in sand and sagebrush. The cab was sun-bleached. The paint blistered. The windshield was shattered. The refrigerated trailer was still attached, the doors hanging open. Inside, empty. No cargo, no pallets, no driver. The team searched the cab. They found Ray's logbook on the passenger seat, water-damaged but readable. The last entry was dated September 14, 1987, 11:30 p.m., mm 212, clear, on schedule. They found his thermos, his maps, his cigarettes. They found his wallet in the glove box, driver's license, $63 in cash, a photo of Claire. They found no blood, no signs of struggle, no body. Linda called Tom Delgado. She asked him to pull every record he could find for Ray Milliken between September 14 and September 16, 1987. Tom spent 3 days in the archives. He found one more document. It was a payphone call log from a gas station in Winnemucca, 87 miles west of Lovelock. The log was dated September 15, 1987. At 7:42 a.m., someone had placed a collect call to a number in Sacramento. The call lasted 4 minutes. Tom cross-referenced the Sacramento number. It was Pine Valley Freight's dispatch line. Linda called the Pine Valley fleet manager, now retired. His name was Gene Rucker, 71, living in Tahoe. Gene remembered the call. He said a man had identified himself as Ray Milliken and said he'd had truck trouble but was fine. Gene had asked for his location. The man had said near Winnemucca and hung up. Gene had logged the call, noted Ray was safe, and moved on. He'd assumed Ray would check in later. He never did. Linda asked Gene if he remembered the man's voice. Gene paused. He said it had sounded like Ray. Same cadence, same flat Midwest accent. But something had been off. The words had been right, but the tone had been wrong. Too calm, too careful, like someone reading a script. Linda pulled phone records for the gas station in Winnemucca. The collect call had been placed at 7:42 a.m. The gas station's security camera log from 1987 had been destroyed in a fire in 1994. But Linda found the attendant who'd worked that morning, a woman named Marla Chen, now 68, living in Elko. Marla remembered the call. She remembered the man who made it. He'd been white, maybe 45, wearing a denim jacket and a baseball cap. He'd paid for the call in quarters. He'd seemed nervous, kept looking at the door. Marla had asked if he needed help. He'd said no, and left. She'd watched him walk to a car, parked at the edge of the lot, a brown sedan, she thought, maybe a Ford. He'd driven off, heading west. Linda asked if Marla remembered anything else. Marla thought for a long time. Then she said, his hands. She said the man's hands had been dirty, not grease dirty, but dirt dirty, like he'd been digging, and there'd been a smell, not gas, not sweat, something sharper, chemical. Linda checked the forensic report from the Kenworth. The cab had been dusted for prints. They'd found Ray's prints, as expected, but they'd also found a second set, partial prints on the steering wheel and the door handle. The prints didn't match Ray. They didn't match anyone in the Nevada database. Linda submitted them to the FBI. No hits. The trailer told a different story. The refrigeration unit had been shut off manually, probably within hours of the last weigh-in. The temperature log inside the unit had stopped recording at 2:47 a.m. on September 15th, 33 minutes after the Fernley scale. That meant someone had opened the trailer, removed the cargo, and shut off the cooling system. But there were no drag marks, no pallet tracks, no signs of heavy lifting. It was as if the cargo had evaporated. Linda called a refrigerated trucking consultant. She described the setup. The consultant said, if you wanted to move 32,000 pounds of frozen produce quickly, you'd need a second truck, another refrigerated trailer, probably pre-staged. You'd back the two trailers, door to door, open both, and slide the pallets across on rollers. With 2 people, you could do it in 40 minutes. With 3, 25. Linda checked theft reports from September 1987. There were no reports of stolen refrigerated trucks in Nevada that month, but there was one report of a refrigerated trailer rented from a fleet company in Reno on September 12, 1987, and never returned. The renter had paid cash, used a fake name, and provided a P.O. box that didn't exist. The trailer had been reported stolen on September 20th. It was never recovered. Linda built a timeline. Ray had left Reno at 9:52 p.m., crossed the toll plaza, and driven west on I-80. At 10:14 p.m., he'd stopped for fuel near mile marker 198. At 11:47 p.m., he'd radioed from mile marker 212, then silence. Between 11:47 p.m. and 2:14 a.m., someone had intercepted Ray, removed 6,000 pounds of cargo, cut the trailer seal, and driven the truck to Fernley to be weighed, likely to create a false trail. Then the truck had been driven to Lovelock, parked at the Silver Sage Inn, and later moved into the desert. Ray had been replaced by someone who looked enough like him to pass a casual glance. That person had checked into the motel, rested, then driven to Winnemucca, and made the payphone call to Pine Valley, ensuring dispatch believed Ray was alive. But where was Ray? Linda requested a ground search of the area around the motel and the ravine. On June 8, 2010, a search team found remains in a shallow grave 400 yards from where the truck had been ditched. The remains were skeletal, partially scattered by animals. Dental records confirmed the identity: Ray Milliken. The coroner's report listed cause of death as blunt force trauma to the skull. Time of death consistent with late evening or early morning hours of September 14, 1987. The skull showed a single fracture, likely from a tire iron or similar tool. There were no defensive wounds. The body had been buried in loose sand and covered with brush. It had lain there for 23 years. Linda reviewed the evidence again. Ray had been killed shortly after his last radio call, probably at or near mile marker 212. His truck had been taken by at least 2 people, one to drive the Kenworth, one to drive a second vehicle. The cargo had been offloaded and resold, likely through black market distributors who moved stolen goods across state lines. The payphone call had been a diversion, buying the thieves time to disappear. The truck had been abandoned, the body buried, and the trail erased. But one detail remained: the partial prints on the steering wheel. In 2014, Nevada upgraded its fingerprint database and resubmitted unsolved prints to the FBI's next-generation identification system. In March 2015, the prints from Ray's truck matched a man named Carl Eugene Trask, 63, living in Barstow, California. Trask had a record, 2 arrests for cargo theft in the 1980s, both dismissed due to lack of evidence. He'd worked as a contract driver for several freight companies, including one that subcontracted with Pine Valley Freight. Linda obtained a warrant. On April 2, 2015, California Highway Patrol arrested Trask at his home. In his garage, they found a lockbox containing old trucking logs, a set of master keys for refrigerated trailers, and a notebook with handwritten notes. One page listed dates, routes, and dollar amounts. September 14, 1987, appeared twice, I-80 West, MM212, and $34K. Trask refused to talk without a lawyer. His lawyer negotiated a deal. Trask would provide details in exchange for a reduced sentence. In his statement, Trask admitted to being part of a 3-person crew that targeted long-haul truckers in the 1980s. They'd scout routes, identify high-value loads, and intercept drivers at isolated spots. They'd force the driver off the road, kill them, take the truck, offload the cargo, and stage the truck to look like an accident or disappearance. Trask said they'd done it 6 times between 1984 and 1988. Ray Milliken was number 4. Trask named his accomplices. Both were dead. One from a heart attack in 1996, one from a car crash in 2001. Trask was charged with first-degree murder. In October 2016, he pled guilty and was sentenced to life without parole. He's currently incarcerated at High Desert State Prison in Nevada. Claire Milliken, now 43, attended the sentencing. She brought a photo of her father, the same one Ray had carried in his wallet. She didn't speak to the press. She sat in the gallery, listened to the judge, and left. The detail everyone missed for 23 years wasn't the broken seal or the missing cargo or the fake motel check-in. It was the weight. The Fernley scale had recorded 41,000 pounds, 6,000 pounds lighter than Ray's loaded truck. But investigators had assumed the cargo was stolen after the weigh-in. No one considered that the weigh-in itself was part of the plan. Trask and his crew had removed the cargo before driving the truck through Fernley, knowing the lighter weight would raise questions later, but not enough questions to stop them. By the time anyone noticed, they were gone. Ray Milliken had been 17 years on the road. He'd driven more than 1 million miles. He'd hauled frozen produce, machine parts, canned goods, furniture. He'd crossed 43 states. He'd never missed a delivery. On September 14, 1987, at mile marker 212, someone decided his truck was worth more than his life. The highway still runs through Nevada, quiet under the stars. Trucks still roll west toward California, their refrigeration units humming. Every year, thousands of drivers pass mile marker 212 without knowing what happened there. Some nights when the wind is calm, you can still hear the static on Channel 19, an open mic, a diesel engine, and the whisper of tires on asphalt. And if you listen closely, you might hear the question no one asked until it was too late. What if the voice on the radio wasn't calling for help? What if it was already too late to call at all?